Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome here to the launch pad and our live launch coverage of Soyuz MS-23 launching from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, launching up to the International Space Station for a Roscosmos rescue mission, replacing the leaky Soyuz spacecraft up at the International Space Station. If it's your first time here, though, welcome here at the launch pad. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. And we're glad to have you joining us live here. Take a moment, engage that like button, share out the stream, and let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We know there's people all over the world, and we're glad to have you joining us all here this evening. Roscosmos is live on the right side of your screen. You can see a live view of the pad and the Soyuz ready to go. The crew access tower has retracted away, and we are now T minus 25 minutes, 5 seconds, and counting until liftoff from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. We're expecting NASA to begin their live coverage in just a moment or two, and we'll patch that in to listen in to the translators from the Russian Mission Control Room as we go through today's count. But as always, we're here to answer your questions, so you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll be answering those throughout this evening's broadcast. And we will go live to bring you live coverage of the docking of the Soyuz spacecraft. That is currently on schedule for Saturday, and we will be scheduling that once we have a confirmation of timing. But if you'd like to learn more about today's mission, as always, you can head on over to tlpnetwork.com/launch, and you can check out our detailed mission briefing. We're excited to be rolling out more and more information on these as we count down now 24 minutes, 15 seconds, and counting till launch. NASA is beginning their live stream, so let's listen in to NASA Mission Control for an update on the status of Soyuz MS-23.
You are looking live at Launchpad 6 at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where it is just past 5 a.m. on Friday morning in the frigid pre-dawn hours. In your view, a Soyuz 2.1A rocket, fully fueled, ready to lift off 24 minutes from now to send the Soyuz MS-23 spacecraft without a crew on board on a 2-day journey to link up to the International Space Station. Soyuz MS-23 is the replacement vehicle for the Soyuz spacecraft that was damaged last December, losing its cooling capability, rendering it available only for emergency purposes. Good evening, everyone, from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center, where the Orbit 3 team of flight controllers is on duty, led by Flight Director Brandon Lloyd, working with their counterparts at Mission Control outside Moscow, standing by for the launch of the new Soyuz spacecraft. This is the video of the coolant leak emanating from the radiator pipe on the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that occurred on the night of December 14th, most likely due to external forces, according to Roscosmos, as two Expedition 68 cosmonauts were preparing to begin a spacewalk. The MS-22 spacecraft is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the International Space Station. Roscosmos engineers and officials working with the International Space Station Partnership determined that Soyuz MS-22 would only be used to return crew members to Earth in the event of an emergency evacuation of the station, with cosmonauts Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin on board. They launched on this vehicle last September, along with their NASA crewmate Frank Rubio. In the event of an emergency, Rubio would be required to return to Earth aboard the SpaceX Crew Dragon Endurance, also docked to the International Outpost. Soyuz MS-23, the new Soyuz awaiting launch, will be the nominal ride home for Rubio, Prokopyev, and Petelin later this year. Once the uncrewed Soyuz MS-23 reaches the station on Saturday night for an automated docking to the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the station, the three crew members will prepare the damaged Soyuz MS-22 for an undocking late next month and an uncrewed parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan for post-flight analysis by engineers. That Poisk docking port for the replacement Soyuz opened up last Friday night when the uncrewed Progress 82 cargo ship undocked following its own coolant leak 6 days earlier, a coolant leak similar to that incurred by the Soyuz. The Progress was deorbited last Saturday and burned up harmlessly over the Pacific Ocean, setting the stage for tonight's launch. Countdown clocks are ticking backward, now 21 minutes, 8 seconds until the liftoff of the Soyuz MS-23. Rather than carrying 3 crew members to orbit, the uncrewed Soyuz spacecraft is loaded instead with 946 pounds of logistics and supplies for the Expedition 68 crew. And again, this replacement vehicle will be the ride home for Rubio, Prokopiev, and Patelin later this year. On board the International Space Station at this hour, the 7 crew members comprising the Expedition 68 crew are asleep. At the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying 260 statute miles over the South Atlantic. Extensive engineering tests of the new Soyuz were conducted by specialists in Baikonur. Yesterday, the ISS mission management team met and gave its final approval to proceed with tonight's launch. To punctuate the criticality of this launch, in attendance in Baikonur this evening are NASA's Associate Administrator for Human Spaceflight, Kathy Leaders, and the ISS Program Manager, Joel Montalbano. The 3-stage Soyuz booster was fueled several hours ago. Everything is proceeding on track for launch. The launch time is 6:24 and 29 seconds p.m. Central Time, 7:24:29 Eastern Time, which is 5:24 and 29 seconds a.m. Baikonur time on Friday morning. Once the Soyuz lifts off, the milestones will be as follows. The first stage separation of the 3 stages of the Soyuz booster is scheduled to occur at the 1-minute 58-second mark into the flight, followed about 36 seconds later by the jettisoning of the launch shroud, and then the second stage shutdown of its engines at the 4-minute 37-second mark into the flight. Second stage separation occurs 11 seconds later. The third stage engines will continue to propel the Soyuz uphill to its preliminary orbit, with third stage shutdown and initial orbital insertion occurring at the 8-minute 46-second mark into the flight. Following that, 3 seconds later, Soyuz separation from that third stage. That will activate what is called Program 4, the deployment of appendages, meaning the solar arrays and navigation antennas, and the Soyuz will be on its way. Again, this is a 34-orbit, 2-day journey to reach the International Space Station. At that point, the chase will be on. Automated docking to the Poisk module is scheduled for Saturday night at 7:01 p.m. Central Time, 8:01 p.m. Eastern Time. We're inside the 18.5-minute mark until launch. Again, you're looking at a view of the Soyuz booster, the 2.1A booster, on Launch Pad 6, Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The gantry arms were retracted about 20 minutes ago, and the vehicle is on autonomous power at this hour.
And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're looking at a live view of the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where Roscosmos is preparing to launch a Soyuz 2.1A rocket from Launch Complex 31/6 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, carrying an uncrewed Soyuz spacecraft up to the International Space Station on what Roscosmos is calling a rescue mission. A couple months ago, a leak was detected on the docked Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that carried 2 Russian cosmonauts and 1 American NASA astronaut to the International Space Station. For the last number of months, they have investigated the cause of this and determined it was from a micrometeorite strike, and that vehicle was no longer a prime, safe option to return the crew. In the event of an emergency over the last couple of months, the 2 Russian cosmonauts would have had to return on the Russian Soyuz craft, but the United States worked and moved a seat over to the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule in the cargo area of the Crew Dragon to be able to have a 5th crew member on board, the American astronaut from the Soyuz. We are now T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds and counting until liftoff. This Soyuz was supposed to launch another crew up to the International Space Station to begin their 6-month mission on the on-orbit laboratory, but due to the situation, that launch has been delayed 6 months. The entire crew schedule is pushing to the right for Roscosmos, and Soyuz MS-23 will fly autonomously up to the space station. Soyuz MS-22 is still docked to the International Space Station, as it is still their rescue craft until this rescue mission has launched and docked. Docking set to occur on Saturday, and we'll bring you live coverage of that here on the launch pad. The International Space Station is preparing to have the arrival of the Soyuz MS-23 spacecraft. For a couple of days, they will move cargo and materials over from the old Soyuz into the new Soyuz and have it set up as their new home, as the crew on board station has an extension from a 6-month mission to a 1-year mission on board the low Earth orbit laboratory. Soyuz MS-22 will undock sometime over the next couple of weeks and will return back to the Earth. It will be not just burned up, it will be returned with cargo on board, but because of the leak to the coolant system, will experience some very heavy heating, high temperature heating inside, so no life critical or temperature critical cargo will be returned on board. That will all wait to come back with Soyuz MS-23. If it's your first time here, though, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage or space briefing or space news update. Take a moment also and subscribe to our new Launchpad news channel. That's where all of our space news updates and exclusive interviews are being posted from now on. And consider joining us on our Discord, because here at the Launchpad, we believe that space is better together, and we would love to have you as part of our community. As we are now coming down 14 minutes, 30 seconds until launch, the crew access towers have retracted away from the Soyuz 2.1A rocket. Fueling is well underway, and we'll listen back into mission control and Roscosmos mission control as we continue through today's count. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those over the next 14 minutes as we count down towards liftoff here this evening. Just make sure you're tagging that at the launch pad. Catching up on some questions in the chat. So they're getting a new one. Yes, this is a replacement Soyuz craft that was expected to launch a couple weeks ago with a crew. A couple weeks from now with a new crew, but that crew will now have to wait 6 months. A couple of you asking, confirming why it's calling a rescue mission. Roscosmos is calling it that. This is what, in their terms, a rescue mission, because right now they have 2 Russian cosmonauts that do not have a safe way home, and one of the rules and requirements of the International Space Station is that there are never more astronauts or cosmonauts on board station than there are seats on spacecrafts that can return them home in case of an emergency evacuation from the International Space Station. And at this time, there is a Soyuz that is not safe for 2 Roscosmos astronauts and 1 NASA astronaut to board to come home if there was an emergency on board the ISS. So the NASA astronaut could be strapped into a seat that they've set up in the SpaceX Crew Dragon to make it work moment. But the 2 Russian cosmonauts do not have a way home. If they have to evacuate the ISS until this spacecraft arrives, they will have to depart on Soyuz MS-22 and possibly re-enter the Earth's atmosphere without a coolant system, which would have them seeing temperatures of 40 plus degrees Celsius for multiple hours in their cabin. So not a great situation. One of the first times we've really seen this type of situation, and it's been a couple of months since that impact and that Soyuz was jeopardized. James, thank you so much for those gifted memberships. Really appreciate that. Big One, Space Comet, Uncle Yukon, Toaster Chip, and MJ Theory. You've got gifted a TLP membership for 1 month. If you're on our Discord, let us know. We'll make sure we add you in there so you can see our behind-the-scenes access, early video access, and more like that. And it's great to see you, James. Thank you so much for your support for the last 14 months. We really do appreciate that. You are helping us bring the best possible coverage of everything space that we can, and we are so excited. We just got off a call with Tori Bruno, the CEO of ULA, for an update on the Vulcan Centaur's first certification flight. If you haven't seen our tweets or the article we just released on that, head over to tlpnetwork.com/news, and we'll drop the link in the chat here as well. But Vulcan Centaur now targeting May 4th, 2023 for its maiden flight from Slick 41 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. If you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're looking at a live view of the Baikonur Cosmodrome and Launch Complex 31/6, where Roscosmos is preparing to launch a Soyuz 2.1A rocket with the Soyuz MS-23 spacecraft to the International Space Station. We're answering your questions. You can send those in the chat by tagging us in the chat at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those live. Matthew says, why does the Soyuz 2.1 use those grid fins? That is a question you were stumping me on. Let me double check that with our team. There is a reason that they are actually there. I want to say it almost has something to do with the escape system, but I want to double check that. Make sure we're doing that right. It is not a grid fin like we're used to with Falcon 9. It's not for recovery type of thing there. And yeah, 40 degrees, though there are places here on Earth that we have that, you are not in a tiny enclosed space in a super heavy pressurized spacesuit for hours on end. You can get out of it. So that is considered not safe for that crew. And that was like the median temperature they would receive. It could overheat higher 40s, 50s during actual Earth reentry because there would be no coolant for the spacecraft or for the astronauts on board. But if you're just joining us, we're now just under 9.5 minutes away from launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. We do have the live coverage from NASA patched in, so we are hearing updates from Roscosmos Mission Control and from NASA as we continue through tonight's count. Propellant loading well underway.
After the Soyuz vehicle reaches its preliminary orbit, there'll be a series of what are known as DV burns, delta velocity burns, of the Soyuz spacecraft's engine. That will initially raise the orbit of the Soyuz vehicle to match that of the International Space Station and to slowly, incrementally close the gap between itself and the station, setting up what is called the automated rendezvous sequence on Saturday, leading to the autonomous docking of this vehicle to the Poisk module. Again, docking on Saturday night, scheduled at 7:01 p.m. Central Time, 8:01 p.m. Eastern Time. Will be on the air live with that coverage as well. Coming up on the 8-minute mark until launch.
And just got an update for that question about the grid fins. The grid fins on the Soyuz 2.1A passively stabilize the spacecraft while the LES is firing during an abort.
T-minus 8 minutes and counting.
They deploy by pivoting outward, but they're not movable otherwise. So, like I said, part of the launch escape system that is on board there by offering some stabilization to the spacecraft. Now, T-minus 7 minutes, 45 seconds, and counting until launch. Hiccup's asking, do you know when the first Axiom module space station will launch? We do not have a timeline on the first launches for that. We do know that they're targeting the mid-2020s for that first module because they do want to have about 4 to 5 years docked to the ISS to build it incomplete. So we should see that coming down the pipeline in the very near future. We do know that we are seeing the first 2 modules of the Lunar Gateway space station, which is NASA and their international partners. That is targeting launch 2024-2025 on a Falcon Heavy. That'll be accompanied by a couple of launches of what we are expecting to be SpaceX's Dragon XL spacecraft. Armored is asking, has MS-22 departed the space station yet? Not yet. It will stay docked so the crew can move supplies and cargo and equipment from MS-22 into MS-23. Set up MS-23 as their new spacecraft, and then MS-22 will be loaded up with other cargo that is not temperature sensitive and will be returned back to Earth. And the Soyuz MS-22 will be returned back and recovered. So the cargo that's being sent back will be recovered. There's a live view inside the Soyuz MS-23 spacecraft. Really odd to see no crew, but you can see they've strapped extra cargo into those seats where these 3 cosmonauts, would have been T-minus 6 minutes and counting. And there is a 0G indicator as there's no crew on board. They have put in a 0G indicator, a little bear there for tonight's launch. This Soyuz is packed full of cargo and resupplies that normally would have accompanied the crew on their initial mission. It is not an official resupply mission like we see launch with Progress or um, Cargo Dragon launches. T minus 5 minutes, 30 seconds, and counting. If you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that subscribe button so you never miss another live launch coverage, space briefing, or space news update. Also, take a moment and share out the stream. It really does help us out. Here at the Launchpad, it's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow because we believe that space is better together. And there is so much happening. We bring you all of our live coverage right here on the Launchpad. But if you're interested in space news, take a moment, click the link that's pinned in the chat. That links you to our second channel, which is the Launchpad News, where we bring you space news updates and exclusive interviews with CEOs, directors, facility tours, and more. And that we've got a lot of content coming your way on that channel in the very near future. And we can't wait to share that with you there. So make sure you subscribe to both our channels so you don't miss anything. James, is there cargo? Yes, there's a bunch of cargo on board. Because there's no crew on board, they were able to include actually some more cargo. They will never launch a mission without actually sending up kind of right on the limit of what they can put on board, because that would just be a waste of a launch when they had capabilities of launching cargo up. T minus 4 minutes, 20 seconds, and counting until liftoff of Soyuz MS-23 from Launch Complex 31/6 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Jim, thank you so much for that fist bump super chat. Really appreciate your support. Thanks so much. T minus 4 minutes and counting. As always, here at the Launchpad, we do a couple things in the chat. Take a moment, let us know where you're watching from. But as we get down into the final minutes of the count, we always do crew go, no go in our chat. So take a moment, let's see a go, no go in there, and we're going to listen in to NASA and Roscosmos Mission Control for the final minutes of tonight's countdown. Let's listen in as we count down 3 minutes, 40 seconds and counting until liftoff of the Soyuz MS-23 on its rescue mission back to the International Space Station to replace the leaky Soyuz MS-22. Richie, thank you so much for those gifted memberships. Really appreciate you.
T minus 3 minutes and counting. Just a few seconds away from booster tank pressurization. And the tanks have now been pressurized. Once again, this optimizes the flow of fuel and adds structural support to the rocket as it sits on the pad. T minus 2 minutes and counting till the launch of the uncrewed Soyuz MS-23. One minute, 30 seconds until launch. The ground propellant feed now being terminated. T minus 1 minute. Auto sequence start initiated. 35 seconds until launch. There's the retraction of the first umbilical tower. The second umbilical will retract in just a few seconds, initiating the engine sequence start. And engine sequence start has begun. Engine ignition confirmed. The engine's throttling up. Now at full throttle. Turbo pumps at flight speed and liftoff. A new ride back to Earth for Rubio, Prokopiev, and Patelin takes aim on the International Space Station. "20 seconds into the flight, roll program confirmed. Engines reported to be operating normally from the blockhouse at Baikonur. 38 seconds into the flight. The Soyuz arcing out to the northeast. Good structural stability on the vehicle. Pressure in the tanks reported to be nominal. We're coming up on the 1-minute mark into the flight. Passing through maximum dynamic pressure. Flight reported to be going by the book, 1 minute 20 seconds into the flight. All structural parameters are reported to be normal. The engine's performing as planned. First stage separation is planned about 20 seconds from now. Standing by for first stage separation. And we've had escape tower jettison and first stage separation. The Soyuz traveling 4,500 miles an hour, 29 miles in altitude, 29 miles downrange, coming up on the 2.5-minute mark into the flight. Mark, 2 minutes 30 seconds into the flight. About 6.5 minutes to go. And we've had launch shroud jettison. This view now from a television camera on the upper stage of the Soyuz booster. Coming up on the 3-minute mark into the flight. Less than 6 minutes of powered flight remaining. The rocket reported to be stable. Good second stage performance. Liftoff time was confirmed at 6:24 and 29 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:24 and 29 seconds a.m. Baikonur time on Friday morning. 3 minutes 40 seconds into the flight. The flight continues to go very smoothly. 5 minutes of powered flight remaining. Four minutes into the flight, the Soyuz traveling 7,400 miles an hour, 81 miles in altitude, 190 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Roll, pitch, and yaw reported to be normal. Good structural parameters, good engine performance. Coming up on second stage separation. Second stage separation confirmed. Third stage engine up and running. 5 minutes, 10 seconds into the flight. 3 minutes and 40 seconds of powered flight remaining. Five and a half minutes into the flight. The Soyuz now traveling just over 10,000 miles an hour, 106 miles in altitude, almost 400 miles downrange from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. 3 minutes of powered flight remaining. All structural parameters continue to perform as planned, as is the third stage engine. Roll, pitch, and yaw, all confirmed to be normal. Good engine performance. Coming up on the 6.5 minute mark into the flight. Less than 2.5 minutes of powered flight remaining. Coming up on 7 minutes into the flight. Mark 7 minutes. 1 minute, 48 seconds of powered flight remaining. Soyuz now traveling some 13,000 miles an hour, 122 miles in altitude. The vehicle reported to be stable. All parameters are good. Engine performance is by the book. Seven minutes, 48 seconds into the flight, 1 minute of powered flight remaining. Eight minutes, 10 seconds into the flight. Once again, good engine performance, good structural stability on the spacecraft. Now 8.5 minutes into the flight, less than 30 seconds until third stage separation. Standing by for third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation. Third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation. Onboard computers now will command the deployment of the appendages, the solar arrays, and you can see them begin to unfurl. Navigational antennas will be deployed as well.
And there we go. Soyuz MS-23 is in orbit, beginning its journey to the International Space Station to give 2 Russian cosmonauts and 1 NASA astronaut a new ride home. You're looking at a live view from the spacecraft. That's going to do it for us here today in our live coverage of the Soyuz MS-23 launch. We will be back live on Saturday, February 25th for coverage of rendezvous and docking of the spacecraft, docking scheduled for 8:01 p.m. Eastern Time. So we hope you will join us back then. But a successful launch of a Soyuz 2.1A rocket launching a Soyuz spacecraft to the International Space Station on a rescue mission to give 3 astronauts a new ride home. If it was your first time here, though, make sure you subscribe to never miss another live launch coverage, space briefing, space news update, or exclusive one-on-one interview. Consider joining us over on our community Discord. It's free to join, and follow us over on Twitter and Reddit. But that is going to do it for us here today. This is Zach from TLPHQ signing off. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.